Profits at German carmaker Porsche plunged by nearly 96% in the first 9 months of this year.
The world's biggest luxury car makers are hitting the brakes. We're talking about brands like Porsche and Mercedes. They bet heavily on electric cars, but that bet is unraveling. Sales are falling, costs are surging, and profits are sliding.
Tonight, an extraordinary moment in global industry is unfolding. A warning bell that few imagined would ever ring, one that now echoes from Stuttgart to Westminster, from Brussels to Beijing. A development so severe, so unprecedented, that analysts are calling it the most dramatic collapse of a major European automotive icon in modern history. This is the story shaking boardrooms, rattling governments, and sending shockwaves across the international market. And if the present trajectory does not change, it could mark the final chapter of a legendary name. You're watching Starscope News. Make sure you subscribe for more in-depth reports that cut through the noise and bring clarity to the world's most critical events. The global automotive sector is confronting a transformation unlike anything witnessed in decades, and at the heart of this storm is Porsche, the German marque long hailed as the ultimate expression of engineering excellence, precision manufacturing, and automotive prestige. But now, the impossible is happening. According to figures initially reported by Handelsblatt, Porsche's profit levels have plunged by as much as 96% in the span of a single year. What was once thought to be a short-term fluctuation driven by global uncertainty has instead deepened into a crisis of historical proportions, one that is challenging the very survival of a brand once seen as infallible. For the first time in living memory, Porsche has been forced to halt production on several of its manufacturing lines. Suppliers, many of whom depend heavily on Porsche's orders, have confirmed widespread cancellations and abrupt reductions. Reports from Financial Times Deutschland reveal that the company's executive board has convened a series of emergency sessions, closed-door meetings where scenarios previously dismissed as unthinkable are now being debated openly. Among them, selling portions of the company, liquidating assets, or even offering majority stakes to foreign investors. How did Porsche reach this unprecedented state? The answer lies in a confluence of pressures reshaping Europe's industrial backbone. The first and perhaps most immediate factor is the deteriorating state of the German economy. Germany has slipped deeper into recession, a slow-moving, grinding contraction accelerated by high operating costs, inflationary pressures, and the lingering aftershocks of the conflict in Ukraine. The resulting energy shock drove production expenses to levels many manufacturers simply could not absorb. At some industrial facilities, electricity and gas bills soared to nearly 4 times their pre-crisis levels, pushing companies to the brink. But the economic slowdown is only part of the story. Running in parallel is a second challenge, one that has grown quietly yet aggressively: the rise of Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers. Brands such as BYD, NIO, and XPeng, names that only a few years ago were considered niche, are now appearing in large numbers across Europe's roads. Their vehicles are not only competitively priced, they are technologically advanced, offering expanded battery ranges, autonomous features, and cutting-edge software systems that many European brands have struggled to match. The shift in consumer behavior has been swift and decisive. Figures from Reuters Automotive show that the market share of Chinese EVs in the European Union surged from just 2% to 22% in the space of 2 years, a transformation that has caught Europe's biggest manufacturers off guard. For a company such as Porsche, whose heritage is built on the roar of combustion engines, the tactile feel of performance driving, and the prestige associated with decades of engineering mastery, the new reality is deeply challenging. Consumers now prioritize battery efficiency, software capability, and digital enhancements over traditional performance hallmarks. The shift represents far more than a change in preference; it marks a rewriting of the very values upon which Porsche built its global reputation. Yet the most dangerous pressure point facing Porsche is one that cannot be solved simply by designing new models or introducing digital upgrades. It centers around access to critical materials: lithium, nickel, graphite, neodymium, the essential minerals required to produce electric vehicle batteries. China currently dominates the global supply of these resources, and recent strategic decisions made in Beijing have placed European automakers in an increasingly vulnerable position. According to findings by the European Commission, more than 80% of the components used in Porsche's flagship electric models originate from China. Should access to these materials be restricted further, production would slow to a crawl, if not cease entirely. A senior official from the German Ministry of the Economy, speaking anonymously to Der Spiegel, went so far as to warn that with a single additional tightening of export controls, several major German manufacturing hubs could be forced to shut down within months. And some early signs of this scenario are already materializing. Analysts at the Mercator Institute for China Studies suggest that Beijing is following a long-term strategy, one designed to apply pressure on Europe by controlling essential links in the supply chain. By weakening these dependencies, China increases its leverage, creating opportunities for state-linked investors to step in and acquire stakes in vulnerable companies. Sources in Berlin confirm that multiple Chinese investment groups have already attempted to purchase shares in Porsche, but were blocked by the German government, which views the automaker as a cornerstone of national industrial identity. But China has not stepped back. Instead, the response has grown more assertive. Chinese state media outlets began publishing articles in the autumn, challenging the long-held supremacy of European manufacturers and asserting that German engineering has entered a period of irreversible decline. Economists describe this as a communications phase, a deliberate prelude to more aggressive economic maneuvers. Reports from Bloomberg indicate that investment funds linked to Chinese state-backed institutions are preparing large-scale offers aimed at securing controlling positions in Porsche. On paper, these investments would be routed through entities in Singapore or Hong Kong. In practice, they are coordinated by Chinese conglomerates seeking to expand their global footprint. Inside the Bundestag, concern is growing swiftly. A number of MPs have voiced alarm at the idea of Porsche falling into foreign ownership, fearing that the symbolic damage alone could erode Germany's industrial confidence. The potential collapse of Porsche would represent far more than the downfall of a single manufacturer. It would signify the end of an era, one in which German craftsmanship and European engineering set global standards. But Porsche is not an isolated case. BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen all face similar structural challenges. They too depend heavily on Chinese markets, for both component sourcing and vehicle sales. Porsche, however, may become the first brand to be swept into the center of this crisis due to its premium positioning and the symbolic weight it carries. A source close to Porsche's headquarters in Stuttgart reports that the company is now evaluating three difficult paths: further cutting production, selling assets, or entering a strategic partnership with Asian investors. While nothing has been finalized or publicly announced, the likelihood of a deal involving Chinese partners is increasing. And as many experts observe, this may be precisely the scenario Beijing has been preparing for. While Germany debates financial rescue packages and contemplates partial nationalizations, China has already constructed an entire industrial ecosystem around electric vehicles, an integrated chain spanning raw materials, manufacturing, transport, and distribution. Every component is designed to reduce costs, streamline production, and maintain total strategic control. In this global chess match, China currently holds the advantage. Unless Germany secures alternative material supply chains, accelerates innovation, or reaches diplomatic agreements regarding exports, Porsche may slip further into instability. If the decline continues into the next year or two, it is entirely plausible that controlling ownership could transfer to Chinese investment groups. Publicly, such an acquisition would be presented as a partnership designed to preserve an iconic brand. But beneath the surface, it would signal a profound shift in global economic power. As senior officials in Berlin exchange increasingly tense discussions, political divisions are widening. Members of the governing coalition remain split between those advocating for state intervention and those insisting that no single brand should be rescued at the expense of the wider industrial framework. The Ministry of Finance warns that Germany cannot support every struggling manufacturer, while the Industrial Committee argues that failure to act could accelerate a systemic collapse. Chancellor Merz has reportedly instructed his cabinet to begin drafting a national rescue plan for the automotive sector. Some early proposals include temporary nationalization, direct subsidies, and emergency funding. Yet critics argue that such efforts may only delay the inevitable, not prevent it. Meanwhile, in Beijing, the developments in Germany have been met not with concern but with confidence. State media remarks from outlets such as Xinhua have openly suggested that Europe must adapt to what they describe as the new rules of the global economy, rules increasingly shaped by Chinese industrial dominance. Among Porsche enthusiasts, long known for their loyalty, doubts are beginning to emerge. Automotor UND Sport reports a growing sentiment that if Porsche were to fall into Chinese ownership, it would no longer represent the same spirit, heritage, or engineering ethos. For many, such a scenario would symbolize the loss of an entire era of European industrial identity. The overarching crisis now extends beyond cars. It challenges the foundations of European manufacturing, economic strategy, and technological leadership. Porsche's struggle reflects a wider realignment in global power, one in which supply chains, innovation speed, and national industrial policy determine who leads and who follows. The critical question is no longer simply, can Porsche be saved? The real question is whether Europe is prepared to reinvent itself before the window of opportunity closes. Without decisive action, Porsche may become the first of several major brands to fall, not because of mismanagement, but because the world around it has changed faster than Europe has been willing to adapt. Thank you for watching Starscope News. If you found this report informative, make sure to like, subscribe, and share to help others understand the quiet but powerful transformations now shaping our global economy. Stay tuned for more in-depth analysis, right here.